3rd of July 2024. In this edition of Boerbeskuit, I'm going to talk about the GNU again. Now, there's something that you have to take into consideration when you look at that GNU. We have been led to believe that that was the only realistic, practical option for South Africa. And I'm not going to differ from that, but here comes the shit. The fuckers are participating in that GNU. They don't give a shit for South Africa. They're all in it for themselves. If you look at that absolute monstrosity of a fucking executive, and you look at how the positions has been divided between the participants in the GNU, you can see that the ANC, once again, took the majority, 63% of the positions. How the fuck is that? They got 40% in the election. The electorate clearly told them, we don't want your shit anymore. But what the fuck does the electorate have to say? They do what they want to do to maintain their positions. And what you must not miss, look at what Cyril has drawn now also into his ministry, the ministry of the president. Look at what the fuck he accumulated for himself. What is he fucking doing? Let me tell you, he is setting himself up like a dictator. That is what he is doing. He wants to be something like Mao Zedong or Stalin. That is what he's planning there. The electorate better open their fucking eyes and see that these guys are dead set on pulling South Africa into a communist, socialist fuck-up. The Chinese abandoned it. The Russians abandoned it. And now for those that want to fucking talk about China, yes, they have got their central committee. Yes, they have it. Like it was under communism. But go and look at the second tier. That is that's where things are happening. That central committee manages it. But here's the big fucking difference. On that central committee in China, highly skilled graduates in the positions there. Not fucking room temperature IQ, natural intelligence fuckers. Highly qualified people. So don't come with your cuck about China with me. If this fucking ANC actually operated like China, we would have seen a different story. The Chinese, they don't fuck around with corruption. They execute corrupt officials. They execute them. The same thing happened in Singapore. When that government took over, what did they do? What did they do? They didn't go for the low-level corrupt officials. They went directly for the top heads, the big boys, and they fucked them up. That's what they did. That's why they are a success. That plus they only make appointments on merit. But merit is a swear word in South Africa. No, fuck that. Favors for friends. Paybacks for favors done. That's what it is. So don't get overly fucking excited about this GNU. This GNU is a fucking death trap for all of us. It's a last desperate grasp for power. And now you must take very good note of this. The ANC top structure, that cabal sitting at the top of the ANC, is totally controlled by XXX. Totally controlled. The same with the DA. So, we've got shit. And they are going to implement all sorts of crap here. We see it happening. We see them paving the roads for it. They want to push us into that XXX New World Plan. That's where they want to push us. The fuck up for us, the citizens, is now they've got some clever guys from the DA with them to fuck us up. Yesterday I published a letter that a boer wrote to John Steenhuisen, and I published that letter specifically so that people can see how that boer communicated with John. We know he's part of the fucking Triple X gang. We know it. He's most probably going to fuck the boere up and push for total control over food production as per instructions from Gates and his other bosses. We know that. But I published that letter so that nobody can ever say he was not warned. He will not pay attention to that letter. He's going to wipe his fucking ass on it, even if he even listens to it. I'm under no illusions. But I published it so that it is out there. So, don't think this GNU is going to work. It's a fucking kite that will not fly. It will not fly. And then you go further and you look at the fucking GNU fuck up in Gauteng. The ANC got something like 38 or 35% of the votes. But they take the premiership and 7 cabinet posts out of 10 for themselves. Where the fuck does Lesotho think he got the fucking right to do that? The DA got almost as many votes as the ANC. The DA must be happy with 3 posts in the cabinet. I listened to Ellen Zille this morning with talking to Bongani, and she said, fuck that, they're not going to fall for that shit. But Lesotho, he thinks he's the Idi Amin of Gauteng. Look at the cuck that he has done. What I want to know from him is, where are the people today lining up for their health care at the private hospitals and private clinics and so forth? He told them that is what will happen after the election. But they got 38% of the vote or 35% of the vote, but they want 70% of the power. That can never fucking work. Then you look at KwaZulu, KZN. There was one party that got 45% of the vote. In my mind, that's a big party. That party represents a substantial portion of the people of KwaZulu. And what did the DA concoct with the IFP? A GNU that excludes MK. How the fuck can that ever work? It will never work. But if you look at the GNU nationally and provincially, it seems to me that this cabal in charge, this criminal cabal in charge, that's all of those politicians. Doesn't matter what fucking party. They are all working together to line South Africa up for massive civil unrest. Massive. Now, you know and I know that this government no longer have the security capability to handle mass unrest. They cannot. Now, I'm trying to think, what the fuck do they plan? How do they think they're going to control this unrest that they are stoking? And then I read and I hear there's now a major fucking meeting happening in Botswana between Americans and the Botswana people around that Moors military base that the Americans has in Botswana. And I come to the conclusion that the Americans are making sure they've got forces on our border for when the shit hits the fan. They want to grab our country. And they're not going to grab the whole country. They will most probably grab the Western Cape, and they're going to try, I'm sure they're going to try for the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu, but they're going to have big shit in KwaZulu, because it's my opinion, and from information that I have, the Russians is not going to allow that. So what you must understand, sitting here listening to me and living in South Africa, we are speeding towards a place where South Africa can turn into a fuck-up like Ukraine, just like that. Where BRICS and the West fights for the harbors and the sea route on our soil. And we're going to be caught in the crossfire. Don't forget that. And you look at that absolute ridiculousness of making that Angie Motshekga the Minister of Defense. What the fuck is that? What is that? What experience does he have of defense? Fuck all. But she's got the ministerial post. And then I see the guy that is now in charge of Home Affairs, and I read this morning that he is going to make it easier for skilled people to enter South Africa because South Africa need the skills. And I think to myself, aha, he's going to make it possible for those Israelis to come here in mass and settle in the Cape. Listen to what I'm saying to you. Will it be a bad thing with a lot of Zionists streaming into our country? I'm between two fires on that one, for the simple reason that at least they can fight and they don't take shit from communists. So we have that there. But we need to be prepared for this fucking fiasco, because this GNU is going to implode spectacularly. The only viable option for South Africa is balkanization. Break the thing up into the regions where people of the same culture can govern themselves. Self-determination. That is the only thing that's going to work. This national unitary system is way beyond its sell-by date. The problem is now that these fuckers that are trying to give us the illusion that they will be the government, they are standing on fuck all. There isn't a government service to support the government. There's a vacuum, there's a dungeon full of illiterate, ill-qualified, unqualified, low IQ people sitting there just receiving salaries. But they can do absolutely fuck all to help the country. Nothing. So if you look at the GNU nationally, Cyril kept the vital positions for him and for his cronies and his cadres to drive their communist ideology through. We are not a country that can support the social expenses that they are accumulating. What we need is large-scale job creation. Large scale. And what is the biggest driver of employment and the quickest driver of employment? Small businesses. So they must stop blocking entrepreneurs and small businesses. But they are doing that for the simple reason that the communists do not tolerate a middle class. It's the elite and the slaves. That's how communists work. That's how communism works. But you sit in a stadium and cheer for fucking Malema. He's doing fuck all to protect you because he's in that elite group. Never forget that. And then there's now long stories about Pieter Groenewald being the Minister of Correctional Services. He'll do a good job, he can do a good job just because he's got a lot of common sense and he's got brains. But how will that benefit us? Nothing, we will see no benefit from it. But the way the Freedom Front Plus treated their voters and their supporters that didn't vote for them because of the way they were treated has at least given him the opportunity to get a ministerial post with a fucking enormous salary and a pension, and this is his last shift. He doesn't give a shit about what is happening now to the ordinary people that supported and trusted the Freedom Front Plus for such a long time. So, we have got a major problem. You can see the turmoil in Europe. There's a definite swing to the right. But I can also see that there is signs that people are beginning to understand that they'll have to go back tribal if they want to survive, because the triple X hand is just too tight around their throats. And it's only the tribes that can get out of that death grip, nothing else. So, on this Wednesday, I just want to say to you, be alert, prepare yourself, listen to guys like Wayne de Toy. Facts are, we are on a route that can very easily turn into utter chaos, because everything, all the signs are there. They've got lots of stories about the water structure fixes that they're doing now in Gauteng. You must understand one thing very clear. There was no investment in infrastructure expansion and maintenance for 30 years, and it's now going to collapse. And it has collapsed. That's why there are people now that I see there's people that say they haven't had water for 6 weeks. You must prepare yourself for a place where you won't have any water for any period of time. They're out of water. I have mentioned it previously. In 1976, the CSIR did a thing where they were investigating the potential carrying capacity of South Africa. And they came to the conclusion that the country can cope with 45 million people. That will leave enough water for agriculture and human consumption. But you must understand, that study was done under and they assumed that the water infrastructure will be maintained and expanded as it was happening at that stage. You know, for 30 years nothing fucking happened. That the ANC built any dams? No. The fact of the matter is that old infrastructure is collapsing now, and at that stage they said the country can carry 45 million. We're sitting here today, officially they're talking 65 million, but there are also people that tell you there's about 25 million illegal immigrants here. That gives you 90 million people. That's double the carrying capacity. And now reality is biting them in the fucking ass. And it's there for everyone to see. They're running out of water. They're out of water in Gauteng. And it's going to get worse. And the beauty of it all is the surface water, the dams and the rivers are fucking unusable for human consumption because of the infrastructure fuck-ups and no maintenance and no expansion of the sewage systems. And if you go and look at the waterworks in the bulk of the towns and cities in South Africa, those things are dysfunctional. So they're going to drown in shit. And there are areas where they're already drowning in the shit. But the people, they don't call out the politicians. They don't do it. No. They'll get themselves busy with fucking racism, cuck and all of that. But that is where we are. And I'm saying again, balkanization is the only way out of this fiasco. And when that happens, a massive drive to fire up small businesses, because it is small businesses that provides jobs the quickest. Think about it and let it sink in. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.